Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 57. Welcome back, my friends and lovers. This is Velvet Eau Claire. As always, I am your guide through all of the secrets, saucy, sexy, and otherwise, of us, the ladies, gents, and non-binary folk behind the tassels. I am so glad that you decided to press play today. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the official finale episode, recap episode of the Season 0 Sex. So those of you who have been listening for a while, you know that basically since around, I think it was October, is when I started the Season 0 Sex here on the podcast, with basically the intention of kind of exploring how sexuality really intersects with our performance art. I mean, obviously it's a very sexual art form in a lot of ways for a lot of people, but I don't think it's necessarily that. And so I've been personally kind of becoming more interested in sexuality and exploring, those things in my own life. And I was able to attend a conference called Sex Down South. Again, if you've listened, you absolutely have heard of Sex Down South before. It was a great conference up in Atlanta last October, and I was able to attend that. And that just kind of really piqued my interest even more. And so I wanted to spend, as I said, it was going to be an indeterminate amount of time kind of exploring some of these issues, talking with some experts in the field of sexuality about how we can figure out how it relates to art and everything like that. And we got into some really, really fascinating topics that I would never have predicted at the beginning of this season. So thank you to those of you who have stuck with me through the whole season, who have listened, who have contributed, who have joined the conversation and given me your feedback. I really appreciate that. It's lit some fires inside of me as well. So if you've missed the Season of Sex at all, you can absolutely go on to Burlesque Stripped Down and check out. There's ways. I'm gonna have a home base for this, which is, I haven't created it yet, but it's going to be at burlesquestrippeddown.com/season0sex. And that is going to be kind of the home base where if you're looking to get into this after the fact, you can see all of the different episodes and some of the big topics that we cover in each one. And that way you can kind of get caught up on all of those. But we had some great interviews and as well as a couple solo episodes. So I'm going to kind of run through some of those, give us a little recap, give us a little finale. After I finish doing that, I do have a couple announcements, a couple introductions to make. I have a couple gals that have joined me on the BSD Posse. So if you haven't heard me say this before, I am kind of building a team of people who are committed to the mission of Burlesque Stripped Down. And that is kind of, like I said, uncovering these secrets of all of us behind the tassels and kind of creating this sense of community and vulnerability and awareness about that. So I have 3 lovely young ladies who have decided to come on board and help me out with that. So I'll be introducing them. And I'll also just be giving a little recap because I had the good fortune, the amazing experience of going to see Dita von Teese live up in Atlanta a few weekends ago. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. So that's what we can expect in this episode. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The Season 0 Sex. As I mentioned, it was just a really interesting time. It's been an interesting, we got about 5 months, about 5 months for me as I've been, starting to explore some of these things and share those explorations with you. As a quick reminder, if you missed any of the episodes, we had, I didn't even count. It looks like we had about 11 episodes that we published during this. So I had my Sex Down South recap episode, which is episode number 45. Then we talked a little bit with Hannah Lee about asexuality in burlesque, which was amazing. Then I had a kind of separate episode, which was my happy birthday episode. It was my 1-year anniversary of Burlesque Stripped Down. So we talked a little bit, there were some announcements there. It wasn't specifically the Season 0 Sex, but it was technically in that. And then I had an interview with Andre Shakti where we went over some of the basics of Prop 60 in California, which was right before the election. And I am happy to say that proposition did not pass. But if you're interested in hearing some of the details of it, of what went down, it was about, supposedly protection in pornography. But it was really just a way to bring the sex worker down and to create all these regulations that didn't need to be there. So, anyway, so that's a very interesting episode. That's episode number 48. And then we chatted a little bit with Virginia Dermy. She and I talked about a lot of different things, but particularly we talked about how burlesque kind of helped her and has helped other people kind of come through trauma and what that means to her. Then I talked a little bit with Shayla Tumbling. That was episode number 50. And we talked about cuddling. We talked about a lot of different things. She was one of the speakers up at Sex Down South, so I was excited to bring her on. Then I had a little solo episode where we talked about the gender unicorn, which is a really awesome resource to kind of work through how you might see your own gender. Not just your gender and your gender expression, but also your sexuality and all of these things. And so you can check that one out. And then we talked with Tyomi Morgan and Sinclair Sexsmith, both of whom I had met at Sex Down South, and they were some of our keynote speakers there. And those two interviews are just absolutely mind-blowing. So definitely suggest listening to those and all of these, really, let's be real. Episode number 54 was with Dr. Liz. And Dr. Liz and I got into a lot of good stuff, including some feminism. And man, if we had unlimited hours in the day, I think that we would be having a podcast about feminism in pop culture, because that would just be amazing. And then, of course, to kind of wrap up the season of sex, we chatted with Miss D20, who is kind of bringing this all back around to a burlesque performer who deals with his sexuality. And she and I got real deep real quick, like kind of unexpectedly, about what role sexuality plays in her performance. So that's the quick recap of who I talked to. I started to go back through each of these interviews, each of these episodes, to really pull out my biggest takeaways. But friends, it's freaking hard. Like, honestly, each of these episodes had so many good moments and so many good points and things that just made me think that honestly, my list was like practically longer. I mean, it was definitely longer than I wanted this episode to be. I would spend another couple hours just recapping it for you. So I would love to hear what your biggest takeaways were. For me, I can sum them up a little bit into two different things. Number one is this kind of general idea that nudity is not sex. And I know it sounds really like, well, duh, of course, you can be naked and not be having sex, like, duh. But more so that nudity is not always about sexuality. And I think that is something, especially, at least in the American culture. I know when I was living in France and Paris, it was a little bit better in that respect. But I think a lot of us in our societies have issues, or our societies in general, maybe we don't personally, but a lot of society has issues with that. This idea that nudity always equals sex and sexuality. And so I think that was a big kind of a through line. Even if we didn't explicitly talk about it, that came up in a lot of the different interviews. This idea of how do we fight this? How do we make it clear that just because someone is, showing a little bit of skin or, being complete, it doesn't always have to do with sexuality. So that was a big one for me. And then number two was the importance of examining what role sexuality has. That's what this whole 5-month season was, right? And I think that it's important that each and every one of us as burlesque performers or producers or even burlesque adjacent, we examine how much of a part, if any, sexuality is going to have in our persona, in our acts, in our creative work. And it can change over time, just the same thing with that gender unicorn we talked about. That's kind of the same thing, but on a personal level. But I think we also have to, that was one thing I suggested in that episode with the gender unicorn. Do one for yourself. And then if you have a burlesque persona, do one for them too. And really think about who that person is. If you have one certain one, otherwise do this maybe for each of your acts or for you as a performer. And then how much is sexuality a part of this? Where does that fall in? Is it kind of an underlying where, basically like the burlesque is serving a purpose for your sexuality? Maybe it's making you become a more sexual human being. Maybe it's making you become more aware. Maybe it's helping you through some trauma. Or does it go the other way as well? Is sexuality kind of informing your performance or influencing your performance? And that'll make it easier to present yourself to producers and to audience members as well. If you're not attempting to be this sexual, titillating being, God, that word is so weird. But if that's not your goal, then you know how to present yourself and you can take the steps and make the choices that reflect that instead of just kind of going to the default, which is, unfortunately, I think it is with a lot of burlesque performers. The default is to be this sexy burlesque performer that's trying to turn people on. Okay, that's a general statement. I probably shouldn't say that. But I feel like that's kind of the default, especially for audience members outside of our community. That's what they think of. The amount of, I think I said this on one of the interviews, but the perfect example is, of course, I was like on Tinder or something ridiculous, right? And the first question always is, oh, so you're a burlesque performer. What is burlesque? I don't know what that is. Da, 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 da. Okay, all right. I'm the ambassador. I get to tell people about this. And then, one of my favorite, only because it was so ridiculous, questions was the guy comes back with, oh, so I bet you get really wet when you're performing on stage, don't you? And I was like, A, super inappropriate question. And B, no, because and I didn't tell him, I didn't get into all this with him. I pretty much just unmatched and I was like, deuces, you're out. But for me, that sexuality, I mean, there's a little bit of it. There's a little bit of that kind of, relationship between my performance and sexuality. And I definitely feel like you're going to learn a lot about me today. After I finish performing, I definitely feel turned on, not just sexually, but just in that kind of adrenaline pumping way. But for me, it's like a Venn diagram, right? They're not completely overlapping, nor are they mutually exclusive. There's an area of overlap, but they each, sexuality and burlesque, have their individual parts as well. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I hope it does. I would really love to hear your thoughts on this because, again, those two things, the idea about nudity and sexuality, as well as like burlesque and sexuality not being the same. I mean, those were kind of through lines in this whole season. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that, especially if they have evolved over listening to these episodes at all. So once again, I would just like to thank you for being a part of this season of Sex with me. I'd like to, huge thank you to everyone I interviewed, the other burlesque performers, as well as the sex educators who took the time out of their busy schedules to come on the show. I did have a couple other people that I was hoping to interview, and either that didn't work out or we had some tech issues with one of them. So I may do a little, annex of the season of Sex later on throughout the year. So you may get kind of like a little mini season of Sex episode coming later on because I don't want to limit my discussion of these things. I've also decided to, as I get more into sexuality and research and developing my personal journey, not just personal, but also professional as I start to get into more sex education and things like that. I've decided to document that journey a little bit as well. And so I have a website. It's not fully up yet, but there is a form there where if you'd like to follow along with this journey, I'm going to try to keep it kind of separate from Burlesque Stripped Down because I know that these things don't entirely overlap and some of you listening may not be very interested as in my personal development and my professional development as a sex educator. But if you are interested and you would like to follow along with that, the website is journeyinvelvet.com. And like I said, it's not fully up yet, but there's a little email, capture form there that you can just put in your email address. And that way you'll be updated when I do kind of put that out there. And as I start, I think I'm going to do YouTube videos. I'm not really sure. I haven't fully decided what I'm doing, but I wanted to get that out there because it helps hold me accountable if I've already said it to you all. And just to see if anyone out there is interested in hearing that. So definitely, head to that website, journeyinvelvet.com. And of course, you can always email me at velvet@burlesquestrippeddown.com to talk to me about this as well. So this is going to kind of wrap up that season. And we're going to get back into interviews with burlesque performers, burlesque producers, burlesque adjacent, all of these people that I am super excited to talk to. I have some really, really, really exciting, some big names in the works. So you're definitely going to want to tune in. As always, a few things you can do to help me out with this show. Number one, you can share these episodes with your friends, your colleagues, your students, your teachers, anybody who's interested in burlesque, whether they are a performer, whether they're in the community themselves, or if they're just an enthusiast or pre-enthusiast, maybe they're intrigued. Is there a word for someone who is intrigued, an intriguist? I don't think that's a thing. So you can share this abound. That would be amazing. You can also head over onto your iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review. So if you're not already subscribed in whatever podcast player you use, that would be fantastic. But even if you aren't an I person, you can still go into iTunes and leave a rating and review for this show. And that is a huge help for me as I start, kind of ramping up and trying to get higher in the search ratings. If you'd like to support financially at all and get a couple perks along the way, you can head over to burlesquestrippeddown.com/support, which will take you to my Patreon page where you can donate just a couple bucks a month and get a few exclusive perks. And it'll help me out with, things like the hosting fees and advertising and things like that. Now, it's a huge help. Thank you so much. And of course, as I mentioned, if you are interested in joining up on the team, we are creating a Burlesque stripped down posse of people that are committed to the mission of authenticity, of vulnerability, of community, of reality, I guess, just showing the truth of what it's like to be a burlesque performer, both to our peers and to people who are interested in the industry. So if you would like to be a part of that, I would love your help. And don't get overwhelmed. You can do just, an hour a month, anything that you want to do. If you would like to be involved and kind of get your name in my ear, I guess, or in my eyes, because it'll be a form, you can go to burlesquestripdown.com/join the posse and fill out a little form there telling me about your interest and what you'd like to help out with. And speaking of the posse, I am so excited to have these 3 lovely human beings on board with me. So let me give you a quick intro, as you might be hearing and seeing these names come up more and more in the future. I am so thrilled to have Miss Anne Honey, Cyclonia Dark, and Rumor Has It on board. And I thought it would be nice to have their words introduce themselves. So let's give a big hello to Miss Anne Honey.
Hey Velvet, it's Anne. I do content curation and opportunities for increased involvement in the burlesque community for Burlesque Stripped Down. And I live in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm originally from the United States though. And I am a professional podcaster. Also, on top of that, I own 2 rats. Their names are Harley and Ivy, and they are the loves of my life, besides my husband, who also is the love of my life, apparently, sometimes. He won't hear this. It'll be okay. Anyway, you asked me to do my thing, so I'm going to do my answers to your this or that. So number 1 is Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, and I say Dunkin' Donuts, even though they don't have them in Vancouver. I really miss them. City or country? City. I'm allergic to the country. I break out in hives, literally. Movies or TV? TV. I'm a giant nerd and I have a lot of shows that I watch. I consume a lot of media. I'm currently also doing a podcast about a TV show called Riverdale. You should watch it. It's on the CW. Or Netflix if you live in Canada. Let's see. Oh, Dita Von Teese or Dirty Martini? Dita, of course, Dita. And then there's a Dirty Martini or beer. I don't like olives and I'm allergic to wheat. So I will say an old-fashioned. Yes, I'm like that. Contrary. Day or night? Neither. I like twilight and sunset. Early morning, and kind of in that hour when people are trying to get home during rush hour. Yeah, that's me. Harry Potter's or Star Wars? I am a Hufflepuff. I have a Deathly Hallows necklace. I own a Hufflepuff scarf. I knit Harry Potter house scarves for godchildren. Harry Potter, all the way, forever and ever and ever. Top or bottom? On my side. That's a thing. Yeah? Mountain or ocean? The ocean. Classic or neo-burlesque? My favorite burlesque performer is actually Gypsy Rose, so it would be classic. Peanut butter or jelly? I like peanut butter in soup. I will send you a recipe. It's very delicious. Comedy or tragedy? Comedy. Marvel or DC? Since I have 2 rats named Harley and Ivy, it's absolutely DC. Heels or bare feet? I can't wear heels. I have really messed up ankles and I have collapsed arches, so I have to be barefoot. And then sleep or sex? Yes. Anyway, that's Anne. That's your human doing your stuff and your things. I'm super happy to be part of the team. Goodbye.
And a quick hi from Miss Cyclonia Dark.
Hello, lovelies. My name is Cyclonia Dark, and I am currently working on becoming an alternative model and eventually a burlesque performer. I joined Burlesque Stripped Down Posse in November, and I'll be helping with the event roundup. So make sure to send me all of your wonderful events so I can get them up and on the website. Thank you so much.
And rumor has it, she was unable to send an audio file so we could hear her lovely voice, but it's okay, I still have her words. Rumor has it, our next member is super excited to join the posse. Rumor has it is a longstanding lover of podcast and is thrilled that Velvet, oh, thank you, has provided one that helps us all look more in depth, not only into burlesque, but sexual identity and body positivity. A member of Breakaway Burlesque in Gainesville, Florida, she looks forward to assisting the team and brand of Burlesque Stripped Down. So I am super excited to have these three lovely human beings on board. We're going to be making some moves, making some waves, and making some changes. So again, if you'd like to join this posse as well, burlesquestripdown.com/join the posse. And if you'd like to reach out to any of us, at the moment you can reach all of us kind of through my email address, which is velvet@burlesquestripdown. We're still in the early stages. I'm still working on getting other email addresses up and all that good stuff. But we'll have that going for you very shortly as well. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was, again, I was so excited and so lucky to get to go up to Atlanta a few weeks ago for Dita Von Teese's The Art of the Tease show. And it was just absolutely mind-blowing and inspiring and reinvigorating. You know, I'm sure some of you have it, whether it's in burlesque or other things, where you kind of start to be like, I'm not really sure why I'm doing this. Like, I don't really know if it's for me, this and that. And I had definitely been having that. You know, I haven't really performed in a while. It's not really, I've been focusing on the podcast. I haven't been getting out to as many shows for financial reasons as I want to. And it's kind of been like, it's kind of been dragging a little bit. But I tell you, this really reinvigorated me. If you have not seen Dita in person, make an effort to do that. And this particular show was fantastic because it was, of course, not only Dita, but it was punctuated and it was enhanced by all of these other just amazing performers. The show was emceed by Murray Hill, who just makes me laugh like none other. Murray is a fabulous, fabulous MC. And of course, Dita opened with her famous martini glass routine, which was just amazing to see. And I was there with a good friend of mine who is a costumer as well as a big enthusiast of pinup styles and vintage styles and everything. So both of us just had these stars in our eyes the whole time. And I decided very early on in this show, basically at the beginning, that my burlesque career goal is very simple. All I want is to be to the point where I am not only taking off my clothes, my beautiful clothes on stage, but I have two boys in really sexy suits that are there to take my clothes from me as I take them off. That's my life goal, or at least my burlesque life goal, right? I don't want to just throw them on the ground. I want somebody to just take this away from me. That's what I want. It's set in stone right now. So after Dita's opening number, we had Ginger Valentine, who did her piece. I'm not sure what the name of it was, but she had a beautiful set piece that was in the shape of a heart, and she's just gorgeous. And then Zelia Rose did her Josephine Baker act, which I'm not sure of the actual name of it, but it was beautiful and just so exciting and fun and everything. Catherine DeLish came out, did her cat burglar number, and then Dita came back out right before intermission to do a debut number that she's never performed before called Lazy. And that was really, really fun to see as well. After the intermission, Dita was back out with her ballerina number, doing with feather fans, which was beautiful. Jet Adore came out and just blew us away with his Zorro number. It was beautiful. Of course, that was an interesting point too, because one of my favorite things about going to shows is not only watching who's on stage, but watching my peers and the other audience members, especially as a performer. That's what I like to see a lot of as well. And so I had this really stark contrast around me. I had this one gentleman to my left, and I'm not sure if he was cis. He presented it in a cisgender way, and he seemed straight. I couldn't tell you for sure, but he had that kind of cisgender presentation about him. And he was just into it, even with Jet Adore's number, right, specifically. Because, of course, a lot of these boys are whooping and hollering for Dita and for all the other sexy ladies. But for Jet, and Jet's up there, like, pretty much almost, like, looking real good with very few clothes on. And this guy next on my left is just into it. He just thinks it's the best thing. He's hooting and hollering just as loudly as he did for Dita. And then you had the guy to my right, who is also extremely cisgender. And he was just the opposite. He was super uncomfortable but he was determined to not show that he was uncomfortable. So, and he did that by not really looking at the stage, but instead looking at all the girls around him, not in a creepy way, but more in the way of like, oh man, I got to hold these girls back. He literally said that a few times. He's like, oh gosh, you girls are going to rush the stage, da 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 da, trying to be funny and trying to be okay with it. But it was just it made me uncomfortable then, because it was just like, he was so uncomfortable, and then it made me uncomfortable, and it was frustrating because I was like, wait a minute, we didn't do that for you when the lady was on stage. We didn't say, oh, we got to hold you back. We got to hold you back. It was just, it was one of those moments where I was unable to fully enjoy the performance because I was so distracted by this. So I don't know. I hadn't planned to really talk about that here on the show, but it was just one of those interesting dichotomies between someone who came across very okay in their own skin and very okay in their sexuality and everything, compared to someone who just clearly wasn't. It was interesting. And I'd be interested to hear whether some of you have had those experiences as well. I try not to share this story in a judgmental way. I understand that we're all at various levels of our journeys. It was just one of those interesting experiences from the audience perspective. And I'd like to hear if you all have gone through that as well. Anyway, I rest my case. After Jedidor's beautiful number, Murray Hill came back out and did a quick a dance challenge with 3 people from the audience, which was hilarious. They were so good. I'm sure Murray says this to all the audiences, but he says that they were the best dancers that he's seen, and it was just so much fun. And then the moment I had been waiting for, I mean, everybody was phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but the moment I had been waiting for, Dirty Martini herself comes out. Ah, Dirty. I am a huge Dirty Martini fan, and it was just amazing to get to see her. You know, we were super close to the stage. It was standing room in the front, and we were about, 1 row of people in front of us. And then, I mean, to just see her up close and personal. Of course, Dita is amazing as well, but I've always kind of resonated with Dirty and her style and everything. So just to get to see that was amazing. And then for the grand finale, Dita came back out and did her cowboy mechanical bull number, which was so much fun as well. And we got a little confetti shower at the end. It was just such an amazing show. It really, really was. And I highly recommend, if any of you get a chance to see her or to see any of these performers live in person, definitely do so. And they're super sweet. I chatted with a bunch of them after the show as well as they came out, and they're super sweet human beings. And there's a possibility that some of them may be coming on the show in the near future. So I'll just throw that out there. All right, my friends, this has been just a quick recap episode. I wanted to make sure that I gave the season of Sex some sort of, kind of like official finale, because now we're going to be, transitioning back. Of course, sexuality stays a common theme as we go through, as we talk with any burlesque performers. This is something I'm going to be curious about. If you'd like to follow my journey, head to journeyinvelvet.com and sign up for that email list where I'll be making announcements as I start making these videos. And a huge welcome to my new members of the Burlesque Stripped Down Posse. I'm super excited to work the 4 of us to create this community for us. If you are interested in being involved in that, do not hesitate to fill out that form at burlesquestripdown.com/join the posse. Or if you don't have time for that, that's fine too. At least send me an email like, hey, I want to be in the posse. Let's be in touch. And that's plenty too. I mean, I just want to hear from you if you would like to be a part of this. So thank you all so much, as always, for pressing play today. I will be back with you over the next few weeks with more interviews, more silliness, more sexiness, all of the good stuff, more reality and vulnerability and authenticity as we just have some fun. And we strip down these secrets of us, the folks behind the tassels. So until then, my friends, I hope you are having a fabulous month of March. Happy St. Patrick's Day to those of you who celebrate or who have a good time. I have my bright glitter green nails on right now as as a little homage to my Irish brethren. So until I talk to you again, my friends, I hope that you stay sexy.